There is a question almost no one asks, and perhaps that's exactly why so few people know the answer. Rome was not just an empire, it was the greatest force of domination the Western world had ever seen, a machine of conquest that swept entire civilizations aside and redrew the map of the ancient world with the tip of a sword. Hispania fell, Egypt fell, Greece fell. Even distant and freezing Britain at the edge of the known world ended up under the Roman heel. And yet, just 20 kilometers off the British coast, there was an island Rome never touched. Known, nearby, accessible, and permanently beyond the reach of the Roman eagles. What most people don't know is that Rome was very familiar with Ireland. Roman writers described it in detail, Roman merchants visited it regularly, and one of the empire's greatest generals stated, with typical Roman pragmatism, that a single legion would be more than enough to conquer it. One legion, 5,000 men. For an empire that mobilized hundreds of thousands of soldiers across the known world, that was almost an insult to distance. And yet, the order to invade never came. No expedition was authorized, no Roman standard was ever planted on Irish soil. Why? The answer does not lie in a military defeat, nor in a devastating storm at sea. It lies in something far more revealing and disturbingly modern about how the greatest empire of the Western world made its decisions, about what happens when an absolute power looks at a territory and decides, coldly, that it simply isn't worth the effort. What you're about to discover will change the way you see Rome, power, and the choices that shape the destiny of entire nations. Because this is not just a historical curiosity, it is a masterclass in strategy, calculation, and the silent consequences of being ignored by the most powerful force in the world. And if you enjoy this kind of content, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future stories. Now sit back, because this story is about to begin. Rome was not just an empire, it was a force of nature dressed in a toga. In a matter of centuries, the Romans swept away nearly all organized resistance and planted their eagles across almost every corner of the known world: arid Hispania, the legendary Egypt of the pharaohs, the sophisticated Greece, and even the cold, distant reaches of Britain at the far edge of Europe. It was as if the map of the ancient world were a puzzle, and Rome was determined to fit every piece, no matter the cost. What makes this story even more fascinating is the curious gap in this near-total dominance. Just 20 kilometers off the coast of Britain, a distance any Roman legionary could cross on a calm morning, there was an island Rome never touched. It wasn't due to a lack of navigation nor geographical ignorance. The empire that built flawless roads across Europe, that mastered the Mediterranean as if it were a private lake, simply never crossed that narrow stretch of water. That island was Hibernia, what we now call Ireland. And here lies the paradox that still intrigues historians today. How did the greatest empire of the Western world overlook such a nearby island? It wasn't an accident nor forgetfulness. There were reasons, and they reveal far more about how Rome thought, calculated, and decided where it was worth planting its flag. What lay behind this decision says more about the Roman mindset than any battle they ever won. And that's exactly what we're about to uncover. It would be tempting to imagine that Rome simply didn't know Ireland existed, that the island lay beyond the horizon of the known world. But history is not that simple. Writers like Tacitus and Strabo mentioned Hibernia in their works with surprising familiarity. It wasn't a mythical land filled with dragons and mystery. It was a real island, mapped, discussed, and known to Roman intellectuals and military leaders of the time. Beyond written accounts, there is concrete evidence that contact between Romans and Irish was part of everyday reality. Roman artifacts, coins, jewelry, ceramics have been found on Irish soil, showing that active trade existed between the two cultures. Roman merchants regularly crossed that stretch of water, bringing goods and carrying information back. Rome knew exactly what lay on the other side. It was not the unknown that held them back. And here is precisely where the question becomes even more intriguing. If Rome knew the island, if its merchants were already traveling there, and if the distance was ridiculously small for an empire accustomed to crossing deserts and marching over the Alps, why did the legions never follow the same path as the traders? The answer was not in the ocean, nor in geography. It lay in something far more strategic and cold, the ruthless calculation of cost and benefit that guided every Roman decision. And that calculation will reveal details few ever imagine. If there was one thing the Romans never lacked, it was confidence. And when Gnaeus Julius Agricola, one of Rome's most brilliant military commanders, looked at Hibernia and declared that a single legion would be more than enough to conquer it, he wasn't boasting, he was making a technical assessment. A Roman legion meant around 5,000 highly trained, disciplined soldiers equipped with the best military technology of their time. To Agricola, Ireland was nothing more than a military formality. What's striking is that even with such a favorable assessment, no emperor ever signed the order to invade. Agricola had the plan, the confidence, and likely the troops. What he lacked was one thing: authorization. And that authorization never came. In Rome, wars weren't decided only on the battlefield. They were decided in halls of power, in political debates, in economic calculations, and long-term strategic planning. An enthusiastic general was not enough to move the bureaucratic and political weight of the Senate and the emperors. This reveals something powerful about how major decisions are made, a logic that still applies today. It's not enough to have the capability to act. The action must make sense within a broader context. Rome did not invade Ireland not because it couldn't, but because those in power saw no value worth the effort. Before any conquest, Rome always asked the same question: what do we gain from this? And in the case of Ireland, the answer was disturbingly silent. Before even considering crossing the narrow sea to Ireland, Rome had to look at its own backyard, and what it saw was far from stable. Britain, already under Roman control, was a logistical and military nightmare disguised as a conquest. The northern region, what the Romans called Caledonia, was never fully subdued. Local tribes resisted with a ferocity that made Roman legionaries uneasy, and Rome could never advance beyond a certain point without paying an unacceptably high price. It was precisely this stalemate that led Emperor Hadrian to make a decision that revealed the empire's true limits: to build a wall. The famous Hadrian's Wall, constructed in the 2nd century, cut across the island from east to west and functioned as a silent admission that Rome had reached its boundary. It wasn't a symbol of expansion, it was a line of containment. Maintaining that structure, along with the troops required to defend it, consumed enormous resources that could have been used elsewhere. To make matters worse, Britain had already delivered Rome a shock few could forget. Boudica led a rebellion so brutal that it burned entire cities and slaughtered tens of thousands of Romans and their allies. It's estimated that around 40,000 troops were needed just to keep the province under control. With that level of strain at home, it becomes easy to understand why no sensible emperor wanted to open a second front across the sea, especially on an island that, in Rome's eyes, offered very little in return. Rome was, above all, a machine. A war machine, yes, but also an extraordinarily efficient economic system. Every conquest was treated like an investment: how much it would cost to invade, how much it would cost to maintain, and most importantly, what that territory would generate in return. Hispania entered that equation with immensely profitable silver and gold mines. Egypt offered agricultural production capable of feeding Rome itself, Even Britain, despite its high costs, provided minerals and resources that justified the effort. Ireland, by contrast, brought nothing comparable to the table. The island had no known major mineral deposits, no large-scale agricultural output that interested the empire, and, perhaps most decisively, it controlled no strategic trade routes. In the ancient world, whoever controlled the routes controlled the money, and Ireland simply wasn't part of that system. It was a largely rural society, organized into scattered tribes, with no major cities to plunder, no infrastructure to absorb, and no wealthy local elite capable of being efficiently taxed. And here lies a lesson that transcends centuries. Limited resources demand surgical choices. Rome understood this better than any other empire of antiquity. Investing legions, ships, supplies, and human lives into a conquest that wouldn't generate meaningful economic return would have been, in Roman eyes, simply irrational. Ireland was not a prize, it was a cost with no clear reward. And Rome, for all its power, never wasted energy where there was no visible gain. But economics alone still doesn't tell the full story. Rome had a very clear pattern when deciding where to concentrate its military power. Danger moved the empire just as much as wealth did. When a region posed a real threat, tribes attacking borders, peoples challenging Roman authority, trade routes at risk, Rome responded with speed and surgical brutality. It was almost instinctive. But when there was no danger, there was no urgency. And the Irish tribes, however warlike among themselves, never launched consistent attacks against Roman Britain that would justify a coordinated military response. This point is more important than it seems at first glance. In Roman strategic calculus, a region needed to check at least one of two boxes to deserve serious military attention: wealth or danger. Ireland checked neither strongly enough. There was no gold to extract and no Irish armies marching toward Roman cities in Britain. To the Senate in Rome, looking coldly at maps and reports from generals, Ireland was essentially invisible, not out of ignorance, but out of strategic irrelevance. It's fascinating how this Roman logic echoes in modern decision-making, whether in politics, business, or personal life. We act with urgency when we feel pain or see clear opportunity. When neither is present, inertia takes over. Rome was no different. Ireland neither hurt nor shined enough to pull the empire out of its comfort zone. And while Irish tribes lived their internal conflicts in relative peace with the Romans, something bigger was changing within the empire itself, a transformation that would forever alter how Rome saw the world around it. There comes a precise moment in Roman history when the empire stops looking outward and begins to look inward. This shift didn't happen overnight. It was gradual, almost imperceptible, taking shape throughout the first century and becoming official policy in the centuries that followed. The Rome that had been born conquering, feeding on new territories like a fire needing fuel, began to realize that expansion came at a cost. Maintaining what had already been conquered was becoming just as challenging as acquiring something new. It was within this context that emperors like Hadrian completely changed the tone of Roman foreign policy. Instead of aggressive expansion campaigns, the priority became consolidating existing borders and defending what was already Roman. Hadrian's Wall stands as the most concrete symbol of this new mindset, a declaration in stone that the empire had reached its limits and was comfortable acknowledging them. New conquests, especially in low-return territories like Hibernia, simply no longer made political or military sense within this new worldview. What's fascinating is that this shift in mentality is itself a form of strategic wisdom. Knowing when to stop expanding and when to consolidate is a rare skill, and Rome eventually learned it. The problem is that this same inertia that protected the empire also made it progressively more rigid, less adaptable, and more vulnerable to the pressures that would come from all sides in the centuries ahead. The decision to never invade Ireland wasn't just a military choice, it was a reflection of what Rome was becoming, and the consequences of that decision would shape the history of an entire island in ways that still echo today. Rome's decision to never cross that narrow sea had an effect few people stopped to consider. It preserved Ireland. While Romanized regions of Europe absorbed the Latin language, Roman architecture, Roman law, and an entire cultural framework that would shape the West for millennia, Ireland followed its own path, intact, Celtic, and deeply tribal. The Irish language, one of the oldest in Europe, survived precisely because no legion ever arrived to replace it with Latin. The culture, traditions, and social structure of Irish tribes remained alive in a way that simply wasn't possible elsewhere. But that preservation came at a cost, and it would be dishonest not to acknowledge it. Regions that underwent Romanization emerged with roads, aqueducts, sophisticated legal systems, urbanization, and infrastructure that accelerated development for centuries. Ireland was left out of that technological and organizational leap. While Britain developed structured cities and complex trade networks, Ireland remained largely rural and fragmented into small tribal kingdoms. This wasn't due to incapacity. It was simply the natural result of being left outside Rome's grand project of transforming the ancient world. And here lies the most powerful insight of this entire story. Sometimes being ignored by a dominant power is both a loss and a gift. Ireland lost centuries of technological and organizational advancement, but gained something no Romanized region preserved with the same intensity: a distinct, uninterrupted cultural identity. An identity that still exists today, more than 2,000 years later, and remains a source of pride for an entire people. Rome conquered the world, but Ireland, without ever fighting the empire, may have walked away with a treasure Rome itself could never conquer. So, after everything you've just discovered, one question is worth carrying with you. What is more powerful, conquering by force or preserving through quiet resistance? Rome had legions, technology, and political will. Ireland had culture, identity, and, perhaps unintentionally, the fortune of not appearing valuable enough to attract the attention of the ancient world's greatest empire. And in the end, the island Rome ignored is the same one that still exists today, with its language, its traditions, and its history intact. That's not a small thing. That's everything. Now think about it. How often in life do people underestimate something or someone simply because they don't see immediate value? Rome made that mistake with Hibernia, and history recorded it forever. Have you ever overlooked something important because it didn't seem urgent or profitable enough? That's the kind of reflection history forces on us when we stop treating it as a list of dates and start seeing it as a mirror. And that mirror, let's be honest, reveals things that are uncomfortable but necessary. If this story surprised you, made you think, or left you wanting more, imagine what the next ones will do. The Roman world is full of moments like this, decisions that seem simple on the surface but hide layers of strategy, power, and consequences that still echo today. What other secrets did Rome leave behind? What other stories are waiting to be told? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because every new video is a new window into a world that only becomes more fascinating the deeper you explore.